Welcome back, everyone, and thank you to all the subscribers supporting this channel. Tonight, we have 4 terrifying park ranger horror stories. Dark and mysterious encounters deep inside forests where nobody dares to go at night. Before we begin, please subscribe, like the video, and share it with your friends if you enjoy scary stories like these. Turn off the lights, raise the volume a little, and let's begin the first story. I'm a wildlife photographer. It's a career built on patience, stillness, and the ability to become just another silent, uninteresting part of the landscape. I've spent weeks at a time utterly alone in the vast, remote corners of national forests. My only companions were the whispers of the wind and the patient clicking of my camera's shutter. I've waited 14 hours in a cramped blind, motionless, just for a 3-second glimpse of a reclusive pine marten. That's how I thrive on that solitude and how I love the deep, profound quiet of the wild. I always thought it's where I feel most myself. At least it used to be. Now the silence is the most terrifying thing I know because it's never truly silent. And the solitude is a lie because I'm never, ever truly alone. This all started 3 months ago. I was on a long-term project in a massive, sparsely populated national forest. It's a primeval sort of place, full of ancient Douglas firs that tower like cathedral spires, their tops lost in a perpetual mist. My goal was to capture a portfolio of the elusive Cascade red fox, a beautiful but notoriously shy creature. For the first few weeks, it was business as usual. I'd rise before dawn, hike miles into the backcountry and set up, waiting for the forest to offer up its secrets. One evening I got the shot I'd been dreaming of. A magnificent male fox. The color of its coat was of a dying fire, paused in a sun-dappled clearing, its head cocked, listening. The light was perfect, the composition was something else. I rattled off a dozen frames, my heart soaring with that pure, electric thrill that only photographers know. Back at my base camp that night, I eagerly loaded the photos onto my laptop. I scrolled through and there it was. The money shot. The fox was perfectly in focus. Its eyes were sharp and intelligent. The background was a beautiful, soft bokeh of green and gold. It was perfect, except for the smudge. In the upper right-hand corner of the frame, there was a strange, vertical blur of white light. It was out of focus, just an artifact, but it was annoying. It looked like a lens flare, but the sun was behind me. It made no sense. I checked the other frames. It was there in the exact same spot in every single one. A persistent, ghostly slash against the otherwise perfect image. I sighed, chalking it up to some weird internal reflection in my lens, and made a mental note to clean all my gear thoroughly. A week later, I was photographing a herd of elk by a river at dawn. Again, a perfect morning. The mist was rising off the water. The great animals were silhouetted against the nascent light. It was a primordial, beautiful scene. I took hundreds of photos, and when I reviewed them later, the smudge was there. Different location, different time of day, different lens, but the same vertical, out-of-focus slash of white light, always in the upper periphery of the frame. Now, I was more than annoyed. I was obsessed. I thought to myself that it was a consistent technical problem. Something I needed to solve. Was it a scratch on my camera's sensor? A flaw in the shutter mechanism? I spent 2 full days troubleshooting, running diagnostics, taking test shots of blank surfaces. I found nothing. My gear was, by all accounts, in perfect working order. The only way to solve it was to recreate the conditions. I went back to the clearing where I'd photographed the fox. I set up my camera on a tripod in the exact same spot, at the exact same time of day. I framed the shot identically, and then I waited. My goal was to see the flare appear through the viewfinder before I took the picture. I sat there for hours, still as a stone, my eye pressed to the camera. The sun dappled the clearing. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves. The forest was quiet, but as the afternoon wore on, a new feeling began to creep in. A low-grade primal hum of anxiety. It was the feeling of being watched. It's a sensation every creature in the wild knows. A prickling at the back of your neck. A sudden cold awareness that you're no longer just an observer, but are also the observed. I slowly, carefully scanned the tree line, my eyes searching for the glint of an eye, the twitch of an ear. I saw nothing, but the feeling grew stronger. It was coming from my side, from the very edge of my vision. I kept my head perfectly still, my breathing slow and even, but my eyes darted to the right. And I saw it, for just a fraction of a second. It was a tall, wavering shape like a column of heat haze. It was the shape of a man, long and thin, and it was hanging upside down from a thick, high branch of a fir tree, its form indistinct and shimmering. The moment my brain registered the impossible image, I snapped my head to look directly at it, and there was nothing there, just the tree branch empty against the sky. The forest was still, the feeling of being watched was gone. I sat there, my heart hammering against my ribs, my mouth dry. I told myself I was overtired, that the solitude was getting to me. I was seeing things. It was a trick of the light, a figment of a sleep-deprived imagination. I packed up my gear, unnerved, and hiked back to my truck. I needed a break. I needed to see other people. I drove to the nearest ranger station, a rustic little cabin that served as the park's administrative hub. There were 2 rangers on duty, an older, grizzled man with a kind, weary face, and a younger woman. I made some small talk, bought a new map I didn't need, and then, trying to sound casual, I asked my question. "Hey, this is going to sound weird," I started, "but have you guys ever seen strange things out in the deep woods, like tricks of the light?" The older ranger looked up from his paperwork. He and the younger ranger exchanged a look. It was a brief, knowing glance, but it was enough. "What kind of tricks of the light are we talking about?" he asked, his voice a low, calm rumble. I felt like an idiot, but I pressed on. "Like a shape, a tall, shimmering shape, of a man hanging upside down from a tree. You only see it out of the corner of your eye." The younger ranger's friendly expression tightened. The older just sighed, a long, tired sound, and leaned back in his chair. "The upside-down man," he said. "And it wasn't a question. Yeah, we've seen him. Most of the folks who spend enough time out here have..." A wave of cold relief, immediately followed by a wave of colder dread, washed over me. I wasn't crazy, but that meant the thing was real. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't know," he said, shaking his head. "Don't want to know. It's just a feature of the landscape, I guess. A weird local phenomenon, like a magnetic anomaly or a patch of strange fog. But what does it do?" "Nothing," he said, leaning forward and fixing me with a serious paternal gaze. "It does absolutely nothing. As long as you do nothing too. That's the one and only rule, son. You see him in the corner of your eye. You keep looking straight ahead. You feel him watching you. You pretend you don't. You do not acknowledge him. You do not engage with him. And you sure as hell don't go looking for him. He's a thing you're only supposed to see by accident. You start making it on purpose, and that's when you get into trouble." "Trouble?" I asked. "What kind of trouble?" "We don't know," the younger ranger chimed in, her voice tense. "No one's ever been stupid enough to find out. It's just common knowledge, a professional courtesy among those of us who work out here. You leave him alone, and he leaves you alone." I left the ranger station with my mind reeling. Their warning was stark and absolute. But they had also given me something else, a validation, and a name, the upside-down man and the smudge in my photos. It was a vertical shape of light, a shape like a man hanging. It was him. My camera could see him even when I couldn't, and that's where I made my mistake. My fatal, arrogant mistake. I'm a photographer. My entire life, my entire purpose, is to see things and to capture them. To be told that there was something out there, a real, observable phenomenon that I was supposed to ignore. It was anathema to me. It was an irresistible challenge. And the ranger's warning was just a dare. I went back into the woods, but this time I was hunting for him. My entire methodology changed. I'd find a spot and wait, not for an animal to appear, but for that familiar, prickling sensation on my skin. The moment I felt it, I wouldn't move my head. I'd keep my eyes locked forward, but I'd raise my camera, aiming the lens not at what I was looking at, but at the periphery. At the space where I felt he was. And I'd shoot. The first photos were chilling. The vertical smudge just grew. It was a brilliant, searing slash of overexposed white light, sharp and defined. It looked like a wound in the fabric of the photograph, a tear through which a sterile, featureless light was pouring. And with every photo I took, the slash grew wider, brighter, more aggressive. It was like I was annoying it, and it was screaming back at me through my own camera. I became possessed by it. I stopped eating properly. I barely slept. I was fueled by a manic, obsessive energy. I filled memory card after memory card with these impossible images. The creature was always there, just at the edge of my sight, a shimmering, wavering promise. And I kept shooting, trying to get a clearer image, trying to resolve that blinding white light into a discernible form. Then, my camera died. I was in a deep, mossy canyon. The feeling of being watched was a palpable, heavy pressure on my right side. I raised my camera, aimed it into the periphery, and pressed the shutter. The resulting image on the small LCD screen was pure, blinding white. A completely blank frame. I tried again. White. I aimed it at my own feet. White. He had broken it. Or more accurately, he had filled it. My camera could now only see the blinding, featureless light of his presence. It was useless. Any sane person would have stopped then. They would have taken the ranger's warning to heart and gotten the hell out of there. But I wasn't sane anymore. My obsession had burned through my reason. The loss of my camera just felt like a challenge, and now I would have to use my own eyes. I continued the hunt. I would walk through the woods until I felt the familiar presence. Then I would stop, and I would try to see him. I'd keep my head pointed forward, but I'd strain my eyes to the side, trying to resolve the shimmering, wavering shape in my peripheral vision. I'd try to hold it, to focus on it, to force it into clarity. And that's when the smudge moved from my photos to my own vision. It started as a small, barely noticeable floater in the corner of my right eye. A tiny, translucent blur. I assumed it was an eye strain, but it didn't go away. And every time I went on one of my hunts, every time I tried to force my eyes to see the creature directly, the smudge would get a little bigger, a little more opaque. It was turning from a translucent blur into a patch of milky white fog. I was in the woods, trying to focus on the shimmering shape hanging from a distant branch. And as I strained, I saw the white fog in my own eye physically expand, spreading like a drop of milk in water. And I finally understood. With a clarity so profound and so terrifying it felt like a physical blow, I understood what was happening. It was that he couldn't be seen directly. His very nature was to exist at the edge of perception, and by trying to force him into the center, by trying to capture him, first with my camera and then with my own eyes, I was violating the fundamental rule of his existence. And he was fighting back. He was erasing the part of my vision that I was using to see him. He was a blind spot, a living, predatory blind spot, and he was growing, feeding on my sight. The panic that hit me was unlike anything I have ever known. It was the terror of a man realizing the weapon he has been firing is powered by his own blood. I was deep in a remote wilderness and I was going blind. I ran. It was a clumsy, stumbling, panicked flight. I tripped over roots I couldn't see properly, crashed through branches that seemed to come out of nowhere. The white fog in the corner of my eye seemed to pulse and swirl with every frantic beat of my heart. I finally made it back to my truck, my body bruised and scratched, my mind a screaming wreck. I drove out of that forest, and I have not been back. That was a month ago. The white patch in my vision hasn't gone away. I've seen 3 different ophthalmologists and a neurologist. They've run every test imaginable. My eyes, they tell me, are perfectly healthy. There is absolutely nothing physically wrong with them. They think I'm having a complex psychological episode brought on by stress and solitude. I knew it wouldn't be that easy. I thought the connection was through the photos. I thought they were the anchor. So last week I built a bonfire in my backyard. I took every memory card, every hard drive, every single print I had made of the white slashes, and I burned them. I watched until they were nothing but a pile of melted plastic and grey ash. I felt a sense of relief, exorcism if I may say. It didn't work. He's not just in the forest anymore. He followed me home. He's here with me now as I type this. Not in the room, not in the house. He's in the corner of my eye. I'll be sitting here on my couch, and I'll get that old, familiar, prickling sensation. And I'll know. If I let my focus soften, I can see him. a tall, wavering, upside-down shape shimmering at the very edge of my vision. Sometimes he's in the corner of the room. Sometimes, when I'm outside, he's hanging from a telephone pole. He's always there, a silent, constant companion. The Rangers were right. The only rule is to ignore him. And now that is my life. I live in a state of constant, vigilant denial. I can never turn my head too quickly. I can never let my eyes wander. I have to consciously, actively, not see the thing that is always there. Because I know that if I try to look at him, if I give in to that primal urge to face the thing that is watching me, the white fog in my eye will grow, and there's not much of my vision left to lose. So this is my warning. If you ever find yourself in the deep, quiet places of the world, and you feel a prickling at the back of your neck, and you see something impossible just at the edge of your sight, for the love of God, pretend you didn't. Look away. Keep looking straight ahead. Some things aren't meant to be seen, and they will take everything from you to make sure you can't. I must be going crazy. I can see a town that doesn't exist. My name is Samuel Baker. I'm a Yellowstone National Park ranger, and I need some advice. I've spent my entire career fighting wildfires for the National Park Service, and after 2 decades in the field, I thought I'd seen everything. Then, about 4 hours ago, an entire town just appeared in the middle of Yellowstone National Park, and the other ranger and I are the only ones who've been in it. We're not alone, however, as you might expect from something appearing out of nowhere inside one of America's most famous parks. The town is home to many people, some of whom have been there for years. They all seem perfectly normal, but they aren't aware that they live inside a national park. My partner Thomas was the first to notice the town. He'd driven into the valley a few hours before dawn one morning and saw a brand new sign on the road. "Welcome to Hungry Horse," it read. When he drove past the next bend in the road, he saw the motel. That's when he turned around to come and get me. The 2 of us had driven up the valley together in our trusty old Chevy Blazer and taken the long way around because we hadn't wanted to pass through the town until we were sure what it was. We parked at the base of the mountain and hiked up. We walked across the railroad tracks and past a small gas station with a lone oil drum full of diesel fuel and another filled with water. The street was lined with old cars, some of which looked like they'd been there for a while, others which had probably just arrived that morning. Hungry Horse wasn't a ghost town or even abandoned. It was thriving. Thomas and I entered the town cautiously because despite appearances, this place could be dangerous. While we didn't run into any trouble, we did notice that everyone seemed indifferent to the fact they just appeared out of nowhere. Most of them ignored us completely, although a few gave us strange looks. "Some of these people look familiar," I said, looking over at Thomas. He nodded. "I know what you mean, Sam. I recognized a couple people in the diner too. It's weird. It's weird." Those words echoed in my head as I watched a man carrying a bucket walk down the sidewalk. "It's weird," I repeated silently to myself. My eyes followed his movements. The man carried himself with confidence and purpose, but he never looked up at where he was walking. Instead, he stared straight ahead and continued forward without looking back once. He disappeared around the corner of a building, and I noticed another person staring directly at me. He was tall and thin, wearing a black hiking jacket. His face was pale and he was bald. He was standing in the doorway of a small coffee shop. He reminded me of the missing hiker we had searched for last week. That's when I realized why I recognized some of the people here. They are all people who have vanished from national parks. That's how we found out that almost every single person in Hungry Horse had been reported missing from national parks. We spoke to everyone we could find. Some refused to talk, others were friendly enough, but none of them knew anything about why they were there. As far as they were concerned, they lived in Hungry Horse, Montana. They weren't sure exactly when they arrived there. A lot of them couldn't remember much before arriving in Hungry Horse. They also told us they'd been here for years. Many of them had been born and raised in the town and believed it was the real deal. They all knew the townsfolk by name and went to school with them. One woman, an older lady named Irene, told us that she had no idea that she'd been reported missing. She worked at the local hardware store and had been living in Hungry Horse for more than 45 years. "What about your husband?" I asked. "Do you have children? Grandchildren?" She shook her head. No, I've never married. How do you feel about being here? Do you miss anywhere else? Your family, maybe? Again, she shook her head. Not really. This is my home. As far as she knew, this was the only home she'd ever known. I tried to ask if she missed her family, but she just smiled and told me that her family was right here in Hungry Horse, Montana. We thanked her and left the hardware store. Hopping back into our park ranger truck, we drove deeper into the town. I really don't like this, Sammy, Thomas said. I've had a feeling of being watched ever since we entered town. I looked over at him. He was staring at a man standing by a large semi-trailer outside the diner. The man was holding a jug of milk. I couldn't help but think of the hiker we'd found dead last week. Sam, are you listening to me? I snapped back to reality and looked at my partner. Thomas had started quivering in fear. Sorry, what did you say? I said, I think we should leave. I don't want to be here anymore. I looked around the town. There were so many people here. So many people who shouldn't be here. All of them were perfectly normal. Some of them even knew each other. How could there be so many people in a town that didn't exist? I agree. Let's go, I said. We drove away from the town and back to the ranger cabin. Thomas was still shaking. I'm going to call this in, he said. This whole thing is bullshit, but we better document it anyway. I mean, how could an entire town full of missing people just appear in the middle of Yellowstone? I nodded. Okay, I'll be in the cabin. I think I need some time to process all this shit. I sat down on the couch and closed my eyes. It all felt unreal. I kept thinking about the hiker we'd found out in the woods last week. He died while out on a hike in the wilderness. He'd been alone and confused, but I just saw him alive and well in a town that doesn't exist. I opened my eyes and looked around. I took in a deep breath and let it out. It smelled like wood smoke and pine. I stood up and started pacing the room. What am I supposed to make of all this? I asked myself. Is this some kind of sick joke? Did the government put a town in Yellowstone for some reason? What if it's not a town? Maybe it's a cover-up for something worse. I thought before zoning out. There was a knock on the door. Startled me out of my daydream. Come in, I yelled. 2 men came inside, both dressed in black suits. Are you the one in charge here? One of them asked. I looked at him and nodded. The guy was wearing a badge on his chest and a gun on his hip. He looked like an FBI agent. I'm about to go and talk to them, and I don't know if they'll believe me. What the fuck do I do? I always liked the quietness of nature, the peace that comes with waking through the trees and into the woods. Also, watching the clear night sky is a very nice thing to do when out in the forest. Seeing so many stars just remind me of how small we really are. How insignificant is our existence. We could disappear in an instant and the universe wouldn't even notice. My brother always brought me with him when he went camping, and that's when I discovered my passion for nature. Now, I just like to go hiking or camping with my friends. As my brother has moved out of the country, I hope I will see him soon. I really miss spending time with him. I'm worried I won't have the privilege of doing that, given the situation I find myself in now. But hope is all I've got. If you read this, please pray for me. I need that. I won't give specific details about me as I don't consider them important. I'm a 26-year-old man. That's the most I'm saying. I will tell you how I got in this situation. I recently started to work as a forest ranger. Everything seemed okay at first, but the fact that they just took me without any interview should have rang some alarm bells. I was desperate for a job as I have very little money, so I never thought about it. The day I arrived at the cabin was beautiful. The sun was setting, leaving off a dim orange light going through the trees. The weather was nice, your typical clear summer weather. Everything was perfect. The cabin is almost entirely made out of wood. Classic, I thought. It's big enough for 1 or 2 persons, and it looks very cozy inside. I stepped through the door and put my backpack underneath the bed. I opened the wardrobe and put on my sleeping clothes. As I got comfortable, I noticed there was a piece of paper on the table, along with a survival guide and a metal crucifix. Something was wrong. I picked up the note and something felt very off about it. I could feel the blood running cold in my veins as I started to read it. Hello, my name is Killian Sutter, and I am the former ranger who worked here. I don't want to scare you, but this job is not as you would expect. You see, weird things happen here, and they can prove to be deadly if you don't follow carefully what I tell you. In order to be able to survive, this note will be your Bible. The rules I have written for you are things I discovered on my own while working here. I don't know if this is everything, but it's mostly what usually happens here. If the light bulb in your cabin suddenly starts to flicker, lock the door immediately, close the curtains and turn off the lights. The thing will come close to your cabin and will try to enter. Do not panic, as it will leave if it doesn't find a way in. Always lock the door behind you when you go outside. Failing to do this will result in the thing waiting for you in the cabin, hidden somewhere. If you hear scratching coming from outside the cabin, do not be tricked by your ears. It's not coming from outside, but from inside. Stay still and hold your breath. The thing is blind, and it won't know you are there if you do that. It should leave by the time you can count to 10, rushing through the door. While outside, be as quiet as you can, or it will hear you. If it does, rush back to the cabin and barricade yourself in there. If at any point you get injured, clean the wound fast and bandage it so that you can't see any blood. The thing can smell blood from far away, and it makes it go into a feral frenzy. Also, change the bandage often. When you do that, throw the old bandage in the fire. Never leave your cabin after the sunset and before the sunrise, no matter what. The thing is much more aggressive when it's dark outside. Before you go to sleep, put the metal crucifix I left you in a direction facing the entrance to the cabin. Set your alarm at 3 a.m. and wake up to check on the crucifix. If it has blood on it, ignore rule number 6 and get out of the cabin as fast as you can and run to the storm shelter. I have marked it for you on the map in the survival guide. Don't try to escape the woods until your contract expires, or the thing will follow you wherever you go. You have been warned. Some situations will require you to combine the rules, so be sure to remember them all. Good luck, and keep yourself safe. Fuck no. What did I get into? Thoughts rushed aggressively through my mind. I was both angry and confused at the same time. I didn't know if the note was a prank or if it was real. Maybe this guy Killian just wanted to scare me. But I'd rather not take any chances and follow what is written on that piece of paper, at least until I realize if it's fake or not. When I got hired, nobody told me that somebody left before I was about to get into this. Maybe they knew I wouldn't accept if they told me this. Soon after, it was dark outside. I was sleepy and I almost forgot to put the crucifix to face the door. Then I went to sleep. The next day I woke up and noticed a big scratch on my right arm. I was bleeding. I quickly cleaned the wound and applied a bandage to it. I also threw my shirt and the stained bed sheets in the fire because they had my blood on them. I froze then. How did this happen? Then I remembered the rule. Set your alarm at 3 a.m. and wake up to check on the crucifix. If it has blood on it, ignore rule number 6 and get out of the cabin as fast as you can and run to the storm shelter. I didn't check the crucifix. I have to admit, I was scared. The list of rules was not a prank. Killian knew something I didn't, and he wanted to warn me about it. I haven't seen this thing he was talking about in the note until now, but I'm sure I don't want to see it. Not after what happened today. I checked to see if the crucifix had blood on it. Yeah, I know. I should have done that hours earlier. It seemed to be fine. Why did I wake up with a big scratch on the arm then? What the hell is going on? I spent the rest of the day in my bed, afraid to get outside the cabin to check the woods. This night I followed the rules exactly as I should have the night before. I put the crucifix to face the door and woke up at 3 in the morning to check on it. It was fine. The next 5 days were peaceful, and I finally summoned the courage to do my actual job and go check the woods. I was quiet and I didn't attract any unwanted attention. Those were the best days. I could actually enjoy being out in the nature and relax for a while. I felt so disconnected from the troubles of my life. I felt a sensation of peace. It was almost like the rules never existed, apart from the night ones and the door-locking one. I was out there enjoying myself. I didn't miss my normal days before I got the job. I enjoyed every last moment of those quiet days, and I'm glad I did, because things started to get bad. On the 80th day, I was inside the cabin reading a book while I was in bed. And then I've heard it. Scratching sounds were seemingly coming from outside. I remembered the rule. If you hear scratching coming from outside the cabin, do not be tricked by your ears. It's not coming from outside, but from inside. Stay still and hold your breath. It should leave by the time you count to 10. I quickly closed my eyes and stood frozen in the bed, holding my breath. I could feel the breath of the thing as it was sniffing me. I think it sensed the smell of fresh meat. A quick meal. I started to count. I was about to reach 10 when I heard a loud noise. The thing rushed out of the cabin through the door. I ran and closed it, locking it in the process. Then I passed out on the floor. When I woke up, it was almost midnight. Oh my God, the crucifix. I quickly rushed to put it in a position to face the door. Did I fail this rule? Am I going to die? These thoughts tormented me until 3 a.m. when I checked it. My heart started to beat fast, so fast that it could tear my chest apart. The crucifix had blood on it. In a panic, I grabbed the survival guide and a flashlight, and I booked it to the storm shelter. I could feel the thing following me, getting closer each moment. After a 15-minute run, I arrived at the storm shelter. I rushed through the door and locked it behind me. Then I fell down from the pain I could feel in my left leg. I think I snapped my ankle trying to outrun the beast out there. I crawled in a corner and fell asleep, waking up before the sunrise from the aching pain in my left ankle. Then I fell asleep again. As I woke up, I asked myself, how am I going to make it back to the cabin with a snapped ankle? I improvised a waking stick out of a wooden pole in the storm shelter, and I started to hike back to the cabin. I had to get help. There is no mobile service in the forest, and I don't have a landline in the cabin. Also, I'm not a doctor, and I can't do anything about my ankle. As I was walking around the forest, I could feel the thing from before was watching me, smiling at me. I was easy prey. I couldn't get away from it anymore. My heavy footsteps were leaving deep marks on the ground as I was getting more and more tired. Finally, I got back to the cabin. I ate something, then I thought of something risky. I planned to leave the woods tomorrow. I knew it was stupid, and I also knew what would happen if I do that. It's written in the rules. I lost the flow of time while contemplating on my decision, and soon it was dark outside again. I turned on the light, and soon it started to flicker. No, not now, I thought to myself. I checked to see if the door was locked, and sure enough, it was. I closed the curtains and turned off the light as instructed. Shortly after, I could hear it. The thing was outside the cabin trying to find a way in. It started to claw at the walls and smash its body on the door. I accidentally caught a glimpse of what the thing looked like through a small part of a window. It was tall, and it had pale skin like it was made out of snow. You could see the veins in its skin, that's how pale it was. It had long limbs and big razor-sharp claws. But the most terrifying thing was its head. It was human, but it was missing its eyes. It had big, dark and empty eye sockets, so dark you could stare into them and feeling a sensation of plunging into the abyss. I could feel the terrible hunger for human meat this creature had, and I was scared. It wanted to tear at me, rip out my flesh and feast on it. It would be just a matter of time until it gets me. After a while it left and I went to put the crucifix to face the door. I also woke up at 3 a.m. to check on it, and it was clean. My lucky night. I had to get some rest for tomorrow. I woke up the next day and geared up to leave the forest once and for all. I exited the cabin and started to hike towards the edge of the woods. I was slow, as I had to use the improvised walking stick from earlier. As I hadn't eaten for a long while, and I was gripped by agonizing hunger, I tripped over and fell to the ground. The noise was loud enough to attract that thing to come to me. I saw it getting closer, grinning its teeth in anticipation. I was done for. Then I heard something in the woods. A very loud growl was echoing through the trees, and it seemed to scare the thing from earlier. Then came a beast similar to this one, running on all fours, and the two clashed in a fight. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The monster which came recently scared the other, which was running like a wounded animal back to the thick tree line. I could see the beast was wearing a torn ranger uniform, or the remains of it. On the badge I could read the name of the wearer, It was written clear and big. Killian Sutter. The thing ran back into the woods, chasing the other beast. What did just happen? I was very confused until I remembered that Killian Sutter was also the name of the last ranger who worked in this forest. Why was he a beast? And why did he attack the other one? I'm grateful that I'm alive. I picked myself up and continued to hike out of the forest. I arrived at the road and got into my car. I called 911 as I was injured, cold and afraid. I passed out after. I woke up in the bed of a hospital. There's something clawing at the door and I know what happened. I broke the last rule. Don't try to escape the woods until your contract expires, or the thing will follow you wherever you go. Now I'm just sitting in the hospital bed, afraid of whatever got out of that forest and is now following me. I can sense its hunger. It wants my flesh, and I know that a door is not enough to stop it. As the hinge got looser and looser, I was preparing for the impending doom ahead. I accepted the fact that I'm going to die. But I got lucky again, as it left before the door was broken. I feel like it's playing with me, preying on my fear, and it knows that I can't do much about it. As I'm writing this, I got discarded from the hospital and I'm sitting in my bed, at home. I know it's only a matter of time before I will see that creature, but this time I won't run. I'm going to face whatever the fuck that is. There are places on Earth that don't appear on maps the way they should, places where satellites fail, where signals die, and where people don't simply disappear, they are erased. One of these places is called the Alaska Triangle, a massive remote region stretching between Anchorage, Juneau, and Utqiagvik, a place responsible for thousands of disappearances over decades. Planes vanish midair, hikers are never found, and search teams sometimes come back with missing members. Or missing memories, but what I experienced there was something no official report would ever describe. I used to be part of a search and rescue unit in northern Alaska. We were trained for extreme conditions, whiteouts that blind you completely, temperatures that freeze skin in minutes, terrain that swallows entire vehicles. But nothing prepared us for that mission. 3 hikers had gone missing near the interior of the Alaska Triangle. No emergency beacon. No trail camera footage, no distress call, just gone. What made it worse was the last message they sent. Something is walking with us. But it's not on the ground. After that, silence. We were sent in 5 men, me, Sergeant Mallory, the team leader, Jensen, the tracker, Cole, the medic, and Ramirez on communications. We thought it would be a standard search. We were wrong. The moment we crossed the unofficial boundary of the Alaska Triangle, something changed. It wasn't obvious at first, just small things. The GPS blinked, then froze. The compass spun slowly like it couldn't decide where north was. The radio gave bursts of static that sounded almost like breathing. Mallory laughed it off. Electronics fail in cold weather. Keep moving. So we did. But the forest felt different, too quiet. Even the wind didn't behave normally. It didn't flow. It stopped and started like something was controlling it. By the second day, we noticed footprints in the snow. Not ours. They appeared beside us, always matching our pace, but when we stopped, they stopped too. And when we turned, they vanished. On the 3rd day, Jensen found something half buried in snow, a backpack, fresh, no frost. No damage, like it had been dropped minutes ago. Inside, a flashlight still warm, a broken phone and a small recording device. We played the audio. At first, nothing, then breathing, slow, heavy, right next to the microphone, then a whisper. Don't look at it when it knows your name. The recording ended with a sharp sound, like someone being pulled away from it. Jensen went pale. This was recorded yesterday, but the snow around it showed no departure tracks. Only circles. That night, we made camp early. The temperature dropped faster than it should have. Too fast, like the forest was shutting something down. Around midnight, Ramirez woke us up shaking. There's something outside. We grabbed our rifles and stepped out. Nothing, just darkness between the trees. Then we heard footsteps. Perfect rhythm. Copying ours, then it started. Speaking inside our heads, using our voices, calling. each of our names one by one, and when Ramirez answered, he stepped into the darkness and disappeared. No sound, no struggle, just absence. After that, everything collapsed. The forest stopped being a place you could navigate. The path back was gone, replaced with more trees, older trees, twisted in unnatural shapes. Mallory finally admitted what none of us wanted to say. We are not where we were yesterday. Jensen checked the GPS. It displayed, "You are not located." That night, we saw it clearly between the trees, a shape that didn't stay consistent. Too tall, then too thin. Almost human, then completely wrong. Like reality was struggling to define it. Cole fired at it. The bullets hit nothing. But something reacted anyway, not physically, but like it felt observed. Then silence returned. Worse than before. Expectation. The next morning, Cole was gone. No footprints leaving. Only footprints leading into the tent. Mallory was losing control, but Jensen had found something worse. A tree covered in carvings. Names. Thousands of them. And among them, ours were already appearing, slowly forming in the bark like the forest was writing us into existence. Or out of it. Only 3 of us remained. We stopped fighting the forest because it was clear now. It wasn't killing us, it was rewriting us. That night, the sky turned white. No stars, no moon, just endless light reflecting off snow. And then we heard ourselves outside the tent, talking, laughing, but wrong, slightly off, like copies of us learning wrong. Jensen whispered, "They're already replacing us." Mallory pointed his flashlight outside, and I saw myself standing there. Same face, wrong expression, too still, and it smiled. Then it said, "You're the last version. We need the original. Everything after that becomes broken in my memory." Running, snow moving the wrong direction, voices collapsing into static, Mallory screaming my name, then forgetting it mid-sentence because that's what the Alaska Triangle does. It doesn't just take people, it removes the idea that they ever existed. I woke up weeks later in a hospital. They said I was found alone near the wilderness. No team, no mission records, no report of anyone else. When I asked about the others, they looked confused. No one else was with you, but sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear them in the forest, calling my name, not asking me to return, but asking me to finish replacing myself. If you ever travel near the Alaska Triangle, and you hear your name carried by the wind, don't answer, because something might already be answering for you.